Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday and welcome to Leadership Live by Sounding Board. I'm Christine Tao. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Sounding Board. We're a dynamic leader development suite that offers coaching and mentoring and scalable technology solutions to help you bring dynamic development to your employees. And I'm very excited to welcome Monicque Vasquez to our show today. Welcome, Monicque.
Hi, Christine. So great to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. So, Monicque, you are, a senior organizational learning and effectiveness specialist at Workday, but we also talked about how you sort of also hold two or three other unofficial titles, and you've got quite an interesting origin story as well. So, I'd love to have you share a little bit about that as a way to kick off the session today.
Absolutely. I love that. I currently just say, when people ask me, what is it that I do? Or they take a look at my LinkedIn profile and they see the many job titles that are listed there that are all running concurrent to one another. I am the face of many portfolios. So that kind of sums it up. I do currently wear unofficially three hats here at Workday. Two of them, however, are from my passion place or my point of purpose in life. One being a key learning liaison and strategy partner within our ERGs, another being our Vibe Council lead, which we'll talk a little bit more, I hope, in just a bit. And then, of course, officially as a senior learning and organizational member of our talent experience team here at Workday as well.
Yeah, and you're still smiling somehow, even with three different jobs. So you must be doing something right.
I am. People are always saying you're everywhere, and I'm like, stretch me to the limits. This is where I operate. Certainly, when I'm at max capacity, I feel like I'm most alive. So that absolutely is true, Christine. Yeah.
And maybe that's a great lead in because it feels like you've really found this intersection or integration of your passion, things that give you purpose, and then the work and what impact you're having every day. So maybe tell us a little bit more about how that came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting, right? When I realized early on that origin story was going to be part of today's conversation, I have to be honest, it made my heart tremble a little bit. My anxiety rose, and that comes from a place of, for me, talking about origin story has always been or felt a little taboo. Maybe something that you wouldn't necessarily share in the workplace, but certainly would share the story in the right setting with the right people who really could be empowered by that opportunity. I will say now that I am learning how to find my voice and learning how to embrace my identity, even as I approach 50 years of age. And so I'm delighted to share a little bit about what makes me and how I show up in the workplace at Workday here today. I will offer a little bit of a trigger warning. This might be sensitive content for some individuals, or maybe not something that you're used to hearing, but here we go. So I do yield originally from the Bay Area. My mother is or was a Scottish immigrant, and my father was a Chicano from Oakland. But the reality is that I was born into a life of adversity that was shrouded in addiction and incarceration. My journey in and out of guardianship began when I was just 9 months old. But it was absolutely, Christine, through those formative years and those experiences that my superpowers were birthed. The things that I carry forth with me today, and I own them, and I live in them, and I breathe them all the time now in the workplace. Things like situational awareness, resilience, and tenacity. Those are just a few of them that I would call out specifically that I'm really proud. I wear them as a badge of honor now. And while that is true, I honestly can say to you, Christine, I didn't come to realize that until much, much later on in life, right?
Yeah.
It definitely got harder before it got easier, to say the least.
Yeah.
Sometimes at my own undoing, sometimes just due to circumstance.
Yeah.
Um, thinking back, it's a long time ago, so you rewind the tape, but in those high school years, I was a scholarship recipient, but in sharing here, I did not pursue higher education. So to this day,
Mhm.
I still struggle greatly with imposter syndrome. What I
Mhm.
did pursue were certifications. And it's
Mhm.
interesting because here at Workday, Christine, we are leaning into skills-based organizations and
Yes.
really capturing the essence of what each individual brings to the workplace and the
Yeah.
power of their skills beyond their degree, right?
That's right.
And so that's really an incredibly beautiful place to be.
Yeah.
Um, I will say, kind of fast forward a little bit in life, my first L&D role was due in whole to all of what I just mentioned so far, right? Which was adversity and certifications. At the time, the state of California was implementing a welfare to work program where they
Mhm.
were going to encourage an office automation course. And so what they were looking for was somebody who had Microsoft Office certifications, and I
Yep.
had those. So I raised my hand. But even more so than that, I aligned with that community. I had been a lifelong recipient of state benefits as well.
Yeah.
It was really there in that experience that, for the first time, I would say in my life,
Yeah.
I felt worth and I felt like I had a greater purpose. I
Yeah.
could share my knowledge and give it to somebody in the community that had not been as privileged.
Yeah.
It was really also there, Christine, though, that I realized for the first time my own privilege.
Mm.
Privilege is relative.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, we step into a room and today maybe we're majority, and tomorrow you step into another room and you might be in the minority, right? But just being able to look across that and acknowledge the space that we're coming from, that we're living in, the energy that we get to impart on other human beings, and really how all of that impacts both the learning and the development process, right?
Yeah.
But fast forward to how this shows up for me today. I'm still working on, as I shared, understanding my own identity
Yeah.
and the intersection that I approach the workplace from. As I mentioned, in the many faces of different portfolios and the three soft titles that I have here at Workday, I
Yeah.
am deeply embedded in our employee resource groups, or employee belonging councils, as we call them at Workday. I'm either a member or an ally of every single one of these groups. And I really learn every single day from those that are in our communities. How do I embrace my voice? And how can I use it for myself and others when they don't have one?
Amazing. I mean, well, one, just thank you for sharing that. And I think I had shared with you before this call that I think what's been really powerful about this series that we're doing is that so many of folks in the community of learning and development actually have a very personal story for how you ended up in this as your work, right? And to think about how you yourself were able to create opportunity for yourself through learning and acquiring new skills, and now you're doing that and trying to open that aperture up for many more people. I mean, for me, I just wanted to say it's very inspiring, so thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Well, and I think also the other is your point on sort of relative privilege. It's something I think so many people are grappling with, this idea of privilege today. If you think about even what's happening globally in the world,
Mhm.
right? And recognizing even here, just in the United States, the privilege that we have relative to people in other countries who are facing very challenging circumstances. It's certainly very relevant, I think, for even just the state and thinking that an emotional state that a lot of people are in today.
Mhm. Mhm.
If I could ask you then, if you think back to both your personal experiences and then some of what you've brought into your work, what do you think has been that thread that has really come into the way that you go about your work, not just in Workday, but across the broader community? And how does that impact your vision for how you think somebody in a role like yours can have in an organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. In all honesty, I think I just have a natural capacity to operate from a place of curiosity.
Mm,
And what it has done is it's created this really great environment and climate for people to lean in and share their perspective in terms of what it is that they want, what is it that they need, how are they being grown in their current capacity in their professional space, and maybe sometimes how they haven't. In a lot of these instances, it has also demonstrated a need for inclusivity
mm,
in our products and the way that we're leveraging different learning opportunities, and really being focused from that user-centric approach. So who is it that's going to be consuming this content? What
yeah,
type of target audience am I looking towards? Here at Workday, we are a global company. So how can we create those focus groups that includes a larger and more dynamic voice, and also is able to reach different audiences in terms of where they are from a business perspective? We've got folks that are in product and technology. And then, of course,
mhm,
similar to myself, we've got those folks that are kind of in that backbone space, which are in human resources, and their needs are vastly different. Yet somehow they're all the same, right? We do speak a universal learning language. I truly believe that. I think as we think about, my own vision for L&D would be that we're, as mentioned, inclusive, we're user centric. We're really deeply embedded in the flow of work, because that's how people are going to retain all of what we're imparting on them, right? How many of us have went out and built a really well-intentioned program and nobody's picked it up? And that's tough, right?
mm,
That also means is that they're not embedding that into the flow of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so nobody's really benefiting in that type of a situation, right? Um, I'm also a huge advocate, like, let's try something new, right? So my vision would be that we really embrace technology and stop being afraid of it. I know that in the L&D space, having gone to ATD conference this year in San Diego, great experience, but all the hype was around AI and ML, and there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear and trepidation, I think, from L&D practitioners, but also from, employees alike. That unsurety of, is something going to take over my job and I'm no longer going to be useful, right?
yeah,
So how do we really create that alignment between what's available to us and harness those powers and leverage them to get on the creation side of things, and then execute, execute, execute? Because we can do it a whole lot faster if we start channeling some of that as well, right? And create a
yeah.
partnership. Yeah, absolutely.
Have you found when you think about embedded in the flow of work, for some people that might bring up the idea of that's you're talking about technology, right? Oh, it's got to be something and where I can access that as I am, online and driving through all of the different tools that I utilize. Is that how you think about it? Or I'm guessing you probably think about it more broadly, but maybe break that down for us.
I do. I love that. And thank you for that clarity. Absolutely. So I'll give you a great example. I actually recently just started a partnership in a consulting capacity for myself, along with community colleges here in California. And what we're doing is we're educating classified workers, which are non post secondary education
Yeah.
employees of the community, et cetera. And we're running them through a skills series, right? So an entire year long, different skills workshops, et cetera. And when I talk to them about embedding their learning in their workflow and what they do, is
Yeah.
really being able to take a quick action. I
Mhm.
can come out and I can deliver a really knock your socks off workshop, Christine. But if
Yeah.
all they walk away with was an impression of me, then I haven't done my job and they're not using a new skill, right? So when
Mhm.
I create my programs, I'm always looking at what's the quickest way for them not only to consume the information, but to execute on that execution on that particular skill as well. And so making sure that people have that action item that they can take, that they've got a simple framework, they know how to employ it, they can actually deliver on it. And now we're also following up really to ensure how that's going and creating a community of practice around this.
Yeah.
Part of learning is maybe messing up, right? And so embracing failure is really important, but it's really even more invaluable when we embrace failure amongst one another and then we cheerlead, right? So again, in this capacity of a partnership at the community college level, we're encouraging those participants that come to these experiences to, number one, come into the workshop. Number two, go take that quick action. And then number three, go share that learning in a visible way with those that are part of that cohort, so that they can continue to hold one another accountable for leveraging and exercising that skill.
Yeah, I think that's very important and something we certainly at Sounding Board are hearing a lot, given that oftentimes people may think about coaching as a modality of practice, right? And so I think there is this theme that I'm continuing to see now around learning being, you might get the frameworks, it's exposure to the content, you're sort of giving people's perspective, and that could happen in different ways, through digital means, through live experiences, all of the sort of modalities that are available to us. But I feel like there is a big groundswell around this idea of, but then how do you actually embed that thinking? How do you actually shift the behaviors? And how do you do that as quickly as possible? And really having that be part of the definition of learning, somehow in a way that maybe, I haven't spent as much time in the learning space as you have, but certainly for me, it felt like this focus on practice has really elevated over the last few years as we've seen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We want people getting in there, using that new skill, exercising it, and it becoming part of their muscle memory.
That's right. That's right. And we know it takes time to do that. It's not one and done. Yeah. As my co-founder often will say too, particularly around new skills or things that are a fundamental shift, even from a mindset perspective, oftentimes when we are in times where you are overwhelmed or you have so much going on, it can be very easy to default to prior behaviors, right? So the muscle memory and practice really is one way of shifting that so that it sticks.
Absolutely.
Well, could you then tell us, you shared a little bit about this work that you did. For a lot of the folks in this session, they're trying to enact similar programs within their corporate environment. And I'm wondering if you have a similar example or a program or initiative, that you've done in a corporate environment that might help make it very tangible for folks, how your philosophy shows up in the actual design and implementation of those programs.
Absolutely. So I have the great pleasure of being what we refer to as a Vibe Council lead here at Workday. Vibe is an acronym for us internally that stands for Value, Inclusion, Belonging, and Equity. And it's really a DEI initiative to elevate the sentiment of inclusion and belonging within our respective functional areas of the business. So, of course, as an L&D practitioner here at Workday, I am part of People and Purpose, which is just our fancy way of saying human resources. And so I get the great pleasure of leading the council through strategy and execution around a campaign that's designed to really elevate this experience within ourselves. It's really interesting, Christine, because in HR, as you would know, we're always worried about everybody else, right?
Yes.
What's their benefits? What's their compensation? How are we going to get them hired? How do we manage them once they're here, right? How do we keep them growing? And again, L&D is a part of that. But it's really interesting. The analogy that we actually use as a part of this Vibe Council is to be reminded and stay grounded to kind of the sentiment that we hear every time we board a plane, which is please apply your own oxygen mask first, right? If we in HR don't feel a sense of inclusion and belonging amongst our peers, how are we going to impart that into the masses of our work, right?
Yeah.
And so really the goal of this council is to focus on an initiative and or a campaign, if you will, that again is really holistically around being able to see ourselves in one another within our respective area. So We are a collective of 12 representatives across HR, a beautiful mix of different people and different levels of the organization. We certainly as well represent all of our demographic areas. So we have representation from APAC, we have representation from EMEA, and of course here in North America as well. And as we endeavored on the work together, we were able to develop a strategy that we call Amplified Voices. And really, the goal of that campaign is to not only share the stories of other people in purpose, HR workmates, but also to be able to offer education along the way. So, again, kind of embedding the emotion into this campaign, right? So, it's great to share the story and do that maybe once a month, but how do we keep the learning going? How do we keep the feelings alive? And so we do that, a variety of different ways, but, connecting conversations between leaders in the organization and their workmates. Again, once a month, we have an entire panel experience where we've got 3 individuals that come in and share their personal story related to DEI initiatives in the workplace. And then again, we offer up those education nudges in this experience as well. It's absolutely beautiful.
And is there any feedback or anything you're learning about what impact this approach has had?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's data in all things, both qualitative and quantitative, right, Christine?
Yep. Yes, yes.
But we're doing a little bit of both in this
Yeah.
experience. I'll be honest with you. We want to make sure that we're hitting the mark, right? Because again, any good strategy is what do we want to see in the future? And then how do we back ourselves into that experience, right? So we have those milestones along that way. But things such as, obviously data in particular, we're looking at how many people are participating, what is their sentiment around the Net Promoter Score of these experiences, and really, are they walking away with a deeper sense of understanding of their colleague in this space? Those other pieces that we're really looking at with regards to the program, the learnings that we're taking away, is that people really do want more to be closely connected with one another. They see a vast improvement in the psychological safety that's just in the space alone, let alone kind of pulling that thread through to their team as well. And we know that psychological safety then increases innovation because people aren't afraid to say, hey, I have this idea, right? They have that sense that this is a safe space to be able to share that, and that people will give them that candid feedback, right? Kind of the blue sky approach, if you will.
Well, I think one thing that stood out to me is as we're talking about inclusion, as we're talking about equity, and given your role as learning and development, you haven't talked about training people how to do this. You've talked about how to have them experience this and really live that deeply as a means of learning. And to me, that's kind of it's a very different approach, I think, than maybe what most people think should be initiatives around DEI. Would you agree?
I would, absolutely. So I firmly believe that human beings are inherently good and resourceful. So we can figure things out on our own. But again, let's create an experience where we can share those learnings, right? And so you're absolutely correct. There's a difference between the teaching me and the facilitating me, which is really just facilitating an experience for individuals to be able to learn together. To be able to share what it is that I know today to be true, and to even debunk some of those myths around the things that they're learning as well. But absolutely, in all capacities, I firmly believe that we should, again, allow people to have a high level introduction to conceptual work, let them, of course, meet that where they're at, and then from there we can expand on things.
And there's one more thing I'll ask you about this, which is, you've used the word strategy or, strategic alignment several times as you've talked about just the different programs and initiatives that you've run. And certainly that's a very common desire and intent for folks in the space, which is how do you help others understand the strategic value of the work that you are doing as a learning practitioner, right? And the work that you're deploying out to employees. Is there any advice you would give others around that or how to do that successfully?
I would I think as it relates to my experiences with strategy in particular, I call
Yeah.
this the evolve or go extinct. And really what it boils down to relative to strategy is staying agile and adaptive, aligning your learning programs with your business strategy
Yeah.
and your DEI strategy, right? So it's that two-pronged approach, because when we get so siloed that we forget about, again, who is the user, what is the experience for them, that's when we're kind of taking a step back from that horizon. And that's really what strategy is all about, is being able to look across, develop future ready skills, staying connected to our humans. Remember, they're just as nervous as all of we are, and prepare for future work, because the future of work is changing, right, Christine? So
Yeah.
again, I think that those are from me, from one L&D practitioner to those that are here in your audience today, I would just say evolve or go extinct, and listen, listen, listen. Yeah, keep your eyes on the horizon.
Yeah, it's interesting how across every function, we're doing a lot of planning at Sounding Board as well, whether it's sales, customer success, learning, people. Ultimately, it comes down to being customer or user centric. Who are you trying to serve? And help that and sort of forward that under the lens of the strategic needs of the business. And what you usually end up finding is that those two things have more overlap than you likely had thought.
Absolutely.
Well, if you would leave it, I say this every time, we have hit the end of our conversation. We've got 2 more minutes. I've so enjoyed my conversation with you, Monique. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your past. And I hope you felt comfortable being able to do that in a way. And I'm sure it brought a lot to the audience. Do you have any parting words or thoughts for everybody out there?
I would, well, first of all, thank you so much for creating this space to be able to share, in a comfortable way. This environment has been amazing, and it's always a delight to be able to partner with organizations like Sounding Board. So definitely enjoyed the experience. As I mentioned, I think the further that we can get outside of our own desks and in our own space, the better off that we can be towards our learning initiatives. So don't be afraid to get out of just the 5 people that are in your immediate circle and go ask some of those folks across the business, how are things landing? I know that we're all really busy. I know that we have good and well intentions in our hearts, but sometimes we can get so busy that we forget to really keep on our listening ears. So I would just say step outside of the box sometimes, and definitely listen, listen, listen.
I love that. Well, I don't think you could have said it better. Thank you again, Monique. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And to everybody out there, I hope you enjoy the upcoming weekend and holidays as well.
Thank you so much, Christine. Have a great
Okay.
day.
Yep. Bye.